The first thing I remember is the cold. It seeped into my bones as I slowly regained consciousness, my head pounding like I'd been hit with a brick. My wrists were tied behind my back, my ankles bound together. The scent of leather and something dark, cologne, maybe, lingered in the air. Panic clawed at my throat as my eyes fluttered open. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. The room was dimly lit, lined with bookshelves. A fireplace crackled in the distance, casting eerie shadows. Heavy curtains covered the windows, sealing me inside. I tried to move, but the restraints held firm. That's when I heard him. "You're awake." The voice was deep, smooth, and laced with something far more dangerous than the situation itself. I turned my head, and my breath caught. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark-eyed. Power dripped from him like a second skin. His jaw was sharp, his lips curled into something between a smirk and a warning. He leaned against the desk, watching me like a predator who had finally caught his prey. "Who are you?" My voice came out hoarse. His gaze flickered to my lips before locking onto my eyes. "That doesn't matter, little one." Little one. The nickname sent a shiver down my spine, not from fear, but from something far worse. Attraction. "Why am I here?" I forced out. His expression darkened, a shadow passing over his face. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing my jaw, tilting my face up. "Because I saw you." My stomach clenched. "Saw me?" His thumb traced my bottom lip, his gaze dark and unreadable. "The first time I laid eyes on you, I knew you were mine." His voice was quiet but heavy, like he was confessing something dangerous. I waited. I watched. And when I saw another man looking at you, he exhaled sharply, his fingers tightening. Something burned in his eyes. Possession. "I don't share, sweetheart." I swallowed hard. I should have been terrified. But instead, all I could think about was how his touch set fire to my skin. And how much worse it would be when I started craving it. I wasn't sure how much time had passed since I woke up in this house. Days blurred together. No one came. No one left. It was just him and me. He never told me his name. Not that I needed it. His presence alone was enough to carve itself into my mind, into my body, into my very existence. He didn't hurt me, not physically. But every word he spoke was laced with control, every glance a silent demand. I wasn't allowed to leave my room unless he said so. I wasn't allowed to speak unless spoken to. And worst of all, I wasn't allowed to look at another man. That last rule made no sense. Who was I supposed to look at? There was no one else here. But I learned quickly that it wasn't about logic. It was about power. It was about him. I wasn't sure how much time had passed since I woke up in this house. Days blurred together. No one came. He never told me his name. Not that I needed it. His presence alone was enough to carve itself into my mind, into my body, into my very existence. And I hated that. But what I hated more? The way he watched me. Like I belonged to him. Like the mere thought of someone else looking at me. I learned that the hard way. It started when I found a book tucked into one of the shelves in my room. A book I recognized. A book I had borrowed from someone before I was taken. I traced my fingers over the worn cover, memories of another life flashing in my mind. A time when I was free. When I could sit in a cafe, sip coffee, and talk about stories with. I froze. With Liam. The realization hit me like a slap. Liam had lent me this book. He was the last person I had been with before I disappeared. Did that mean he was looking for me? I clutched the book to my chest, my heart pounding. Maybe I still had hope. Maybe someone still cared. But before I could hold on to that thought, the door creaked open. I looked up. And I knew, instantly, that I was in trouble. He stood in the doorway, his body tense, his jaw tight. But it was his eyes that sent shivers down my spine. Dark. Blazing. Livid. Where did you get that? His voice was deceptively calm. I swallowed hard, clutching the book tighter. It was on the shelf. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. And do you know who gave it to you? I hesitated. The air between us felt suffocating. It's just a book. Wrong answer. The second the words left my lips, he was on me. The book was ripped from my hands, tossed across the room. His hands slammed against the wall beside my head, caging me in. Say his name. His voice was lethal. My breath hitched. His hand gripped my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. Say his name. I swallowed. Liam. His nostrils flared. Is that who you were thinking about? His tone was razor sharp. Him. I exhaled shakily. He was my friend. Your friend? His voice dripped with venom. Did he touch you? My stomach clenched. That's none of your business. Wrong again. His hand wrapped around my throat, not tight, just enough to make me feel owned. It's every bit my business, little one. His thumb brushed over my pulse, feeling how erratic it was. How much I felt him, even when I didn't want to. You don't belong to him, he growled. You don't belong to anyone but me. I should have screamed. I should have pushed him away. But when his lips crashed against mine, I couldn't. His kiss was raw, desperate, filled with something dangerous. Obsession. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was a warning. A silent promise that I was his, and if I ever thought otherwise, he would remind me. When he finally pulled back, I was breathless. He pressed his forehead against mine. His fingers still curled around my throat. Forget him, he ordered. Forget everyone but me. His lips brushed against mine again, softer this time, but no less possessive. Because if you don't, I'll burn the whole world down until I'm the only thing left. And deep down, I knew the truth. He wasn't lying. I had been stolen by a man who would never let me go. And the worst part? A part of me never wanted him to. It happened too fast. 1 second, I was yelling at him, shoving against his chest, my frustration bubbling over. The next, he had me pinned against the wall, his breath hot against my lips. Careful, little one, he warned, voice thick with something dark. You're playing a dangerous game. I should have pushed him away. I should have fought harder. But when his lips crashed against mine, I didn't. I couldn't. His hands tangled in my hair, his body pressing against mine, his kiss bruising, claiming. He kissed me like he owned me. Like he had the right to. And the worst part? I let him. After that kiss, things changed. He became worse. More possessive. More obsessive. More dangerous. If I even glanced toward the door, his hand was on my waist, his grip bruising. If I so much as mentioned leaving, his jaw clenched, his entire body coiled like a predator ready to strike. You think you can leave me? He growled one night, pressing me against the table, his fingers digging into my hips. I swallowed hard. You can't keep me here forever. His lips brushed against my ear, his voice sending shivers down my spine. Try me. And I knew, in that moment, that he meant it. I had to leave. I knew that. Loving him didn't change the fact that he was dangerous. That if I stayed, would never be free again. So I waited. I planned. And the moment his back was turned, I ran. The cold air bit at my skin as I sprinted down the gravel driveway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. I made it to the road. I saw headlights. Hope flickered in my chest. But before I could wave down the car, arms wrapped around me, dragging me back. My scream was swallowed by the night as his voice growled in my ear. Bad girl. I thrashed against him, but his grip was unyielding. Like steel. Like a man who had no intention of ever letting go. You really thought you could leave me? His voice was dark, amused. Tears burned my eyes. Please, let me go. He turned me around, his fingers gripping my chin, forcing me to look at him. His eyes burned with something I wasn't ready to name. Never, he whispered. And then, before I could fight him, he kissed me. Hard. Desperate. Like he was punishing me. Like he was branding me. Like he was making sure I never tried to run again. And deep down, I knew the truth. I never would. Because I belonged to him now. And some cages aren't meant to be escaped. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe.